This week, I officially learned that ranching will humble you fast. 1 minute, you're proud of yourself, and then the next minute, you're actually considering whether or not to jump out of a moving truck. And then tucking and rolling in order to get a gate shut. Hi, I am Tammy, and if you're new here, this is me learning ranch life in real time on our family land here in South Texas. And if you've been here a while, thank you for continuing to follow along while I try to figure all of this out. This week, John let me load the hay buggy 2 times, and I timed myself both times. The first run took me about 7 minutes. It's a 5-bell trailer, so a little more than a minute per each bell. Now, that probably, it's starting to sprinkle. That probably sounds terrible to someone who knows what they're doing, but I'm just getting started, and that was a huge improvement over the last time. Then later this week, he let me have another try, so I timed myself again. The second time this week, it took me 12 minutes. It sounds like I got worse, but I was trying to pick up the bells the way that John does. So when I spear a bell, I just go in there and poke the bell and pick it up perpendicular to the ground. John's method is to come in from the top at an angle and use the ground for resistance. And he just makes it look so easy the way that he does it. Smooth, fast, and clean, and I just haven't figured out how he does it so effortlessly. I did try his way on 2 of the bells, and it was horrible. I barely had them hanging onto the spear, and I wasn't even sure that the bells were gonna make it back to the trailer before I dropped them. Everything he does just looks so automatic, like he was born with a tractor lever in his hand or something. Meanwhile, I'm still mentally narrating every single moment to myself. Forward, oh, I need to move back. Let me tilt a little bit. Okay, press the clutch, change gear, where's my spear? Don't rip the net, don't upset John. And park. All right. Okay. But if he keeps letting me practice, I think speed will come from repetition. I also spent a little time in the garden this week, and I am pretty sure that I killed almost every tomato plant that I transplanted. When I originally planted them, I planted them too thick. Way too thick. The seeds were just too little. I didn't have enough patience. So I tried thinning them out and moving some around. That was my plan. Just get them started and then I'll thin them out. I didn't even consider that there might be a correct time of day to emotionally traumatize vegetables. I moved them in the middle of the day, and even though we were experiencing a cold front, it was in the high 80s or high 70s or low 80s, which is way cooler than what a normal day in May looks like, but I'm still pretty sure it was just too hot and not ideal to move them then. Morning or evening might have been better and smarter. Within just a matter of minutes of being transplanted, the tomato plants were extremely wilted. And I also think I'm getting close to needing shade cloth. That's something my dad never used in the garden. South Texas does not care about your gardening optimism, but somehow the transplanted tomato plants are actually doing a little bit better. They still look like they might die, but they're not dead yet. So that surprises me. We'll see how they do. There were also 2 funny, at least to me, misunderstandings this week. which honestly just feels very on brand for me in this environment. The first miscommunication occurred on the way back from a cattle lease. I was texting with someone that I was supposed to meet at 10 a.m. and they were asking me where I was at because it was 9:55. So I'm sitting in the passenger seat communicating on my phone and I was not paying attention. And all of a sudden I noticed that John's truck just came to a stop and I looked up and we were in the front of his yard. And he's always in a hurry. So I just assumed he wanted me to get out of the truck right there on the highway so he could continue driving. So I immediately gathered my belongings, opened the door, and jumped out of the truck. And then I got yelled at for jumping out of the truck. You know, he's like, "Get back in the truck. What are you doing?" Because John was letting one of his truck drivers out through his gate, you know, yielding to them, if you will. Then the very next day, we were leaving one of the leases, and usually I close the gate there behind us every single time we leave. So we're approaching the gate, I open the door, and, you know, before he comes to a complete stop in order to save time. But this day, John wasn't really slowing down, you know, enough to let me get out of the truck to open the gate before getting back out onto that county road. So I thought, what is this, a test? And I was there, genuinely considering whether or not I could safely jump out of the truck, tuck and roll, and still somehow close the gate for my brother. Thankfully, before I committed to this terrible plan, he let me know we weren't shutting it because we were coming right back with molasses. And honestly, I feel like I spend a lot of time out here just trying to interpret transportation decisions. This week was a very eventful, fun week. I had a great time out here this week. I got to harvest honey this week with Rosalio. John had discovered a bee colony in an old piece of equipment, a feed grinder, that he's going to give away. And he wanted the bees removed before that person comes to pick up the equipment so they don't get stung or attacked, which is a very real possibility. So this is the first time I've ever even seen inside a beehive. And it was fascinating. Rosalio cut all of the honeycomb out, and then I got to bring it back to the shop and extract all of the honey from the combs. And we ended up with 8 or 9 pints. And I'm not gonna lie, this whole bee thing has me really excited. I even reached out to a local beekeeper this week, and he has agreed to help me get started. He has some used equipment I can buy. He's gonna share some contacts with me, and he said I could have all the advice I would need. So I'm realizing pretty quickly that beekeepers are nice people. And I'm realizing pretty quickly that beekeepers are some of the nicest people in the world. Also, beekeeping is a lot like cattle ranching. You just need a much smaller footprint. You have to make sure that they have a water source. You have to feed them sometimes and make sure that they have vegetation near them that's beneficial. You have to monitor them for some kind of a mite. I can't remember what it's called right now, but the mites can destroy the colony if the mite population gets too big. I can't remember the name right now, but I'll add it on the screen when I edit this episode. You have to make sure that they can recognize their home or their bee box, and that they don't drift. What else? Instead of keeping track of a bull, you know, I will need to be monitoring my queens. I don't need hundreds or thousands of acres, you know, to have 150 or 300 head of cattle. I can literally put hundreds of bee boxes up. I'm gonna start with maybe 4. I plan just to start with 4 or 6 boxes and see how all of this goes. We are also still delivering hay to the cattle leases, but because there's finally green grass coming up, the cows are starting to prefer the grass over the hay. The problem is there's still not enough grass yet. You know, it's not very tall. So John has started flipping the round bales from their rounded side to the flat side so that he can soak them with molasses. Apparently, sticky sugar hay is more appealing to cows. These round bales that he had were very stemmy and apparently not very good. But the first bale I tried flipping would not move. And I could tell my brother thought I was just struggling because I was being a girl about it. Then he tried to flip it himself, and he also struggled. Eventually, we did get it flipped over together because that bale was heavier. But then I tried to flip a second bale, and I struggled again, but I finally did flip it. And that's when my brother informed me that I was trying to flip the bale upwind, which somehow never occurred to me. Cycling? Absolutely. Headwinds are a mother. Hay flipping? Apparently also yes. This week also came with a very serious reminder of how dangerous rural roads can be. Somebody tried passing in a no passing zone on a hill and nearly hit my brother head on while he was hauling hay. Thankfully, the damage was mostly to the mirrors, but John did receive several superficial cuts on his face from the shattered glass. He had his window down on impact. This could have been much worse. And I think people sometimes forget that farm trucks, tractors, trailers, hay equipment, 18-wheelers, they cannot maneuver like regular vehicles. And if you have never had the opportunity to drive one of these other pieces of equipment or vehicles, you don't understand that. Until you're behind that wheel trying to turn that equipment, slow down that equipment, or bring that equipment to a stop, you just don't know. So if you live anywhere near a rural area, or if you're ever going through a rural area, please slow down, on these farm to market roads and on the county roads. Getting somewhere 2 minutes faster is not worth anyone losing their life. So please slow down. And we ended the week with what honestly felt like a miniature real-life rodeo. 4 of John's sheep escaped, and we were trying to push them back into his shop yard so they can help eat the grass around the shops. And honestly, it's genius. Less mowing, less maintenance. And we might have a few more sheep employment opportunities. But trying to move sheep where you want them to go is apparently a lot like moving any other livestock. We finally got them back in, 2 at a time, and honestly, those are the kind of days that I look forward to. The fun days, the slightly chaotic days, the stories you'll laugh about later days. And I think that's what this whole process is becoming. A lot of learning, even more mistakes, maybe even some small improvements, and a whole bunch of stories in between. If you're following along while I figure all of this out, I'd really appreciate your support. Please like, comment, heart, follow, share, bookmark, do all the things. Follow along with me. I'm still learning, and I'm not getting much better yet, but I will. Hasta luego, people. That's it for episode 10. All right, let's stop everything here. All right, signing out. There's my face. Are we recording? All right, don't lose the battery. All right. Sorry, Mr. Dove.